ready for this magical moment? Ready for this? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's an alarm, baby. First alarm we've had on the channel, actually, matter of fact. Sounds like a cricket, maybe? Cricket? A cicada? Could be even a frog. I know frogs make noises like that. Hey guys, this is Cam from Craft and Tailored, and in this episode of What Is On My Wrist, we're talking about a 1959 Jaeger-LeCoultre Deep Sea Alarm. It's the European version, which is very, very rare. The reference is E857. So about as rare as a hen's tooth, exceptionally awesome and iconically significant. Is that even a word? Iconically significant, historically significant timepiece that you rarely see. In all of my years of collecting, I've seen, I think, 3 or 4 of them. This is probably the 4th example that I've ever seen. And it's just an incredible, incredible watch. You know, there's different categories of vintage dive watches, and there are dive watches that kind of fall into the category of interesting, historically significant, technically differentiating watches that technically differentiate themselves. This is one that kind of checks all of the boxes. Jaeger-LeCoultre, the Deep Sea Alarm, was first introduced in 1959, and it was only produced until about 1962. The theory is that there were 2 batches of these watches produced. A batch that was in like 59 and 60, and then another batch that was produced in like late 61 or into 62. That's not been like proven, but that's kind of what we're seeing based on the extracts that accompany some of these watches and some of the known history. What's interesting about this watch as well is there was 1,061 of them produced, so 1061 in total. David, 1061, very rare watch. Again, I've only seen 4 of these. This is number 4, and this is actually the second European version of the Deep Sea Alarm that I've ever seen and had in our collection. So to talk a little bit about the E857, it's a watch that is highly prized by the collecting community. In fact, I think that only a handful of these actually exist. It was a watch that was used initially for its intended purpose, which was diving, and obviously it is a dive watch, and Jaeger was obviously a leader in producing watches that possessed alarms. So one thing that is really interesting is you would think, you know, diving watches of that period had a outer rotating bezel that would allow you to track elapsed time. This complication, or the alarm complication, was interesting because they built a waterproof watch that could withstand pressure and depth, but that incorporated that alarm function. So instead of, you know, setting the bezel and kind of keeping track on it, you would set the you know, inner rotating alarm function or complication to the time desired to, you know, set a reminder or to ascend or decompress or whatever it was. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that in 2011, Jaeger reintroduced the watch. So they have a heritage version of this watch that was introduced in 2011 that is almost as prized and as collectible as the originals. The price point is obviously a little bit different, but this is the real deal, and it's just an incredibly exceptional example. I love the patina in this watch, and you know, it's a very original example. The watch wears really nicely on the wrist. It's not oversized. It is an oversized watch for it of that era, but what's interesting is it wears really nicely on the wrist. 20 millimeter lug width instead of like a Blancpain from the same era, which would have like an 18 millimeter lug width. I like the proportions of the watch when it's worn on the wrist. So there's 2 crowns on the watch. The top crown allows you to wind the alarm complication. So by winding, you're essentially charging the alarm. And then if you pull the watch, or you pull the top crown out, let me just wind it up so I can show you this awesome complication and feature. What you can do is then set the inner rotating disc, which also has this awesome arrow, to your desired timing, and then essentially it notifies you when, you know, the time reaches that desired position to allow you to ascend or do whatever you need to do. Let's pull that out. And then the bottom crown here winds the watch. It's an automatic, so it's self-winding, but essentially what it allows you to do is wind the watch in the first position, and then in the second position, it allows you to set the time. The one thing that I really love about this watch is the dial is very, very striking. The outer minute track is really interesting and kind of high visibility. Additionally, the middle disc or the inner disc, at least on the European versions, is very much uncluttered and very kind of minimalistic, which is one thing that I really, really like. Jaeger-LeCoultre is up here on the upper portion of the dial, so to speak, whereas in the American or US versions, Jaeger-LeCoultre is printed here on the inner disc of the dial, and then it says Deep Sea Alarm automatic on the inside. The European versions versus the US versions are a lot more rare. So we don't really see the European versions at all. Really, the only place that we'll see them is in auction. There's a lot more of these, domestic or American versions that are available. The dial configuration is also different in the American version versus the European versions, and I'll provide a couple of examples here. Actually, I won't provide them, but David, our awesome editor, will provide a comparison so that you can see the two different dial variations. One other cool thing to note is a lot of these early watches, and this one is in really, really exceptional condition. But if you look here, essentially what you'll see is a little scuba diver on the back. And it basically says Deep Sea Alarm Automatic Swiss LeCoultre. And then there's like a little scuba diver. I don't know if you can get that, Nick. The case back strike, or this etching or engraving, whatever you want to call it, is very light on the case back. So more often than not, what you'll see is you'll see that either polished out or it's been worn down. This one is just in really exceptional condition. Additionally, the luminous material is actually intact in the 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock markers on the bezel. And it does show some patina, which is something that I personally like in a watch. This watch was most definitely used for its intended purpose at one point or another. The other striking element about this watch is that the outer non-rotating dial, so the outer dial, has actually taken on this really intense, rich brown tropical color. The inner disc is kind of a darker chocolate or darker kind of mocha color or whatever. There's a little bit of brown in there, but it compared to the outer ring of the dial is black in comparison, so it has like this really awesome kind of bicolor look. This watch is just stunning. So there's an interesting article that was written by Houdinki a good time back. There was a guy who actually found one of these at an Arizona Goodwill, and he paid $5 for the watch. And I'm pretty sure that Eric Koo owns that watch now, but it's a US version, and it was a really good example that this guy just found in a flea market, and he paid like $6 or something like that for the watch. Obviously these are worth a lot more than $6, but that was kind of a funny and interesting story about this watch. So in any case, very, very rare watch. One other thing, this watch is actually not for sale. This watch is going into the collection of one of our very good customers. I wanted to just kind of also show you something really quickly, if I can get this hyperbaric chamber open. This hyperbaric chamber of a watch container open here. Is the watch actually does come with an original JB Champion bracelet. So finding this watch on the bracelet is also very rare. They were, I believe, sold on like a Tropic dive strap, but this one does retain its original bracelet that was made by JB Champion, which is really interesting. But it has like this very interesting pyramid kind of look to the piece, which is also just really, really cool find. So this one does retain the original bracelet and end links, which are very rare and have kind of an interesting look to them. And it does accompany an archive extract does accompany this watch. So in any case, I wanted to share this with you guys. Really rare opportunity to talk about a very important and very rare watch. Yeah, just wanted to share this with you guys. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for the latest updates and insider information. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, because that's where we post our updates and latest news and happenings here at Craft and Tailored. And be sure to check us out online. That's where we have all of our watches and all of our cool stuff. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I will see you in the next one. See you later.